Okay, so we've got them recorded. I'm gonna wait for a little bit to make sure folks got in here. And then we'll get started looking at y'all's teapots. If you had issues that you want me to demo on your project, I don't have access to your assignment submissions, but you can send it to me at my email, and I can try and load it before your turn to share. Let's see. That's most people. How does it, when I left the meeting, did it close it all instantly for you, or did you have a moment to gather the link before you left?
It asked me to leave and join this new meeting.
Okay, perfect. Good enough. Katie wants to know how to make a handle. Oh, sorry, I realized that was direct. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Zura. That's good to know. I didn't not give out the link adequately. Let's see. Let's do demos after. I want to make sure we like go through everybody's work who has something to share. And just gonna, do you want me to call on you or do you want to volunteer in turn? I don't know what's more uncomfortable. It's kind of personal. I'm gonna call on you. Ryan? Do you have a teapot?
Hey, what?
Do you have a teapot?
Oh yeah, I have mine. Yeah, I submitted mine. Yeah.
Can we see it?
Give me a second to pull it up. Okay. So do I screen share it by the way, or?
Yeah, go ahead and screen share it.
Okay. Then a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Screen. I think I only really ran into one issue with it.
Uh-huh.
And let me see if I can go into edit mode. I'm gonna move this thing. Okay. I'm in the wrong mode. Ah. 1 second. Ah, forgot how to close this side. Join areas. Oh, that's not what I meant to do.
It's all good. No worries.
Wow. Yeah. The only issue I had was with the we were supposed to work in fours, but on the inside part that connects the, I guess, I don't know what it is. So separate thing we're supposed to duplicate on the inside, supposed to connect to it, but it connected weirdly because the teapot's twisted.
Let's see. I'm not sure I'm fully understanding. You had a little issue connecting the inside to the outside. Is that what you're saying? Like the spout?
Part of it, yeah.
Okay. We can talk about some strategies for doing that. I think depending on how you started making it, it might be harder than harder, easier. but there's definitely some things we can try. So I'm gonna add connecting
Excuse me, real quick, can I
your,
get the link to the Zoom in the chat one more time?
what was that, Antonio?
Can I get the link to the Zoom meeting in the chat one more time? Just
Yeah.
so I can send it to another person. Didn't get it.
Uh,
Thank you.
let's see. Thank you for that, Antonio. I'm gonna put connecting interior and exterior parts of model to our list of things to cover. And I'm gonna put creating a handle.
I
Wow,
just got it to display what the problem was.
what was that, Ryan?
It's okay. Screen share again real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like it took me a second to get wireframe back on, disable it while it's working.
Mhm.
So what happened at some point, and I don't know exactly when it happened, but right there, this area got all twisted up. I didn't notice it at all when I was working.
What method did you use to?
I used the Bezier curves as part of the demo. I
So
had
you
some
used-
issues in doing.
You use Bezier curves to model the spout.
Yeah, Bezier and then some substituting surface modifiers to get it all rounded and everything.
Okay.
The handle's
Uh.
fine, but the spout got all weird right there. And because of this, on the inside where it gets, if I can get inside the pot. Right, if I can turn it around too. Ah. Right there, there's all these areas right there.
Mhm.
You can triangles and it's not supposed to do that. But when I tried getting rid of them, because of the twisted way, it deleted the area right here. So I had to leave it.
Um, did you model the whole thing using curves?
No.
So
So
did
how we're
you?
supposed to start it was, we did a circle, but we reduced it to 6 edges instead of having 32 that it normally starts out with. And then we were supposed to extrude it upwards,
Hello, yeah.
make a curve.
Well, I'm not sure I follow exactly what the method was, but I think that's okay. If I had to guess, if you were using a curve to extract your spout, it could be
Just the
really
spout and
easy
handle.
for the handles to get twisted,
Yeah,
which would then make your geometry twisted. And so if I had to guess, I would say it probably has something to do with that. Let's see, Azura says in object mode with your teapot selected, you can press W and the first option in the pop-up menu would be shade smooth. Yeah, totally.
I was
We
responding
will
to a
go
different
over-
question in chat.
Yeah, from Katie's question. Thank you, Azura. Yeah, no worries all. We're trying to go over Ryan's issue with their teapot. And I'm not necessarily understanding the demo that that the teapot was derived from. But if you are giving transforming a curve into a mesh, the orientation of the handles could cause that kind of warping.
I just think the issue is when I was initially setting up the curve before having the cube that we turned into the round spout or handle, I didn't make sure it was perfectly lined up on the y-axis. I think it was slightly tilted, which is why it got that way.
Mhm.
because I didn't know any shortcuts or commands to snap it to that specifically when I was rotating it.
Okay. Um,
Other than that, everything else is fine. It's all good.
yeah.
It's all connected.
It seems like the only real issue is you have a little bit of twisted geometry. Your geometry isn't like perfect quads, right?
Yeah, that's it. Other than that, everything else is perfectly fine. The handle itself is perfect. Actually, it's not anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, it looks good. Um, well, thank you, Ryan. Maybe I'll piece together some more evidence of what y'all been working on as we go along here. Antonio, do you want us to share next?
I literally just did that last night.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want me to skip you?
I can pull it up still. So give me just a second. So yeah, this is what I had when I finished last night. And I got everything modeled, and then we had started doing some slight texturing in class, and I decided not to burn any more of my sleep on that.
Gotcha. It looks good. Antonio, will you explain the exact method that Mark has you creating these teapots from, like start to finish? Are you starting from a cube and then extracting it? What is your process?
This one, no, he actually, like they were saying, we started with circles, I think, and extracted, and then did a lot of stuff in the editing mode.
Okay.
We did loop cuts on basically everything, I think.
So you started with a circle Bezier, and
Yes.
you did your um, extrusions from there.
Yeah, for just about everything, I think. And then the spout and the handle were originally like two like separate parts that I think we made and then added on afterwards.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, can you give me a go round on your piece?
Yeah, so
You
it's
have it joining.
so we have turn this off actually. Basically, we had just a teapot and a lid on at the end from what I got. And then we tried to make everything manifold so that there was like an inside and then outside kind of thing that was happening.
And so I'm guessing you did the manifold form not through creating a mesh from a curve, but a different method, right?
Yes. So for the spout, we added a solidify modifier to that. And then for the inside of the actual teapot, we just duplicated certain faces and then connected it to everything else. And then the lid, we just made it manifold as we made the lid. We just connected everything on the inside and on top. Like in edit mode and stuff.
Oh, looks good. It's nicely arranged. Almost pull back some of the geometry for where the spout connects to the
Yeah.
But other than that, what can I say? Perfectly rendered 3D model teapot. Cool. Thank you, Antonio. Let's see. Jake, do you have a teapot?
No, I was getting some constant error codes with Blender, and I'm currently waiting on a help ticket.
Okay. No worries. Let's see. Does anyone who have like a specific issue they were having with their piece and wants to share, or has a finished piece they would like to share?
I finished my piece with a lot of pain and suffering.
Echo,
It was so
I
hard.
want to see.
Okay, let me share. So I didn't want to do like a round one. I kind of did want to do my own version. I have a picture of the initial, what it's supposed to look like. Of course, it's not the exact same thing, but I did as far as I could go, very tired, very tired. Very hard to understand a lot of
Fair.
things, but I did like my own version of it. I hope this is okay. I know I didn't do the round one, but I wanted to incorporate, like some squareness and show that I could also understand how to do multiple areas and try to follow my initial image as close as possible. Of course, it's not completely the same looking because I don't know how to do that yet, but I did my best. And then I tried to add a background. It's not, again, not the most beautiful one, but
You're
just to show something at least.
doing a lot of hedging right now, and I think
Oh, sorry.
this is fine. It just makes me think maybe this person is nervous to be sharing this. I think it's
I
fine.
am.
I think if I had to guess, Mark's purpose in this assignment is like you're creating a manifold form,
Mm.
mostly from curves, right?
Yeah.
And so did you do like object modeling for the center of it? Or was it
Well,
as
sorry.
well?
I started with a cube. I shaped it into. Then I just duplicated the first area to then put it like above. Then I did another cube so that I wouldn't have the edging here. And then I did a circle and I tried to do this. Sorry, I'm gonna be going up. I did the above, so it's, and then you got the lid. I had a hard time figuring out how to be able to make it go like this, basically. Where you do
Mhm.
the axe, and then you can go S to scale it. And the things that's what I would do, but it would just go flat like this and go like this. And I wouldn't understand. It took me a long time to try to figure out that you actually had to click on it, click on the right click, hold it, or just click and then be able to do that. It was, yeah, a lot of having to figure out like, oh, you actually have to do that. Nobody told me this. I did the exact same thing you told me. No mouse was involved. And so, yeah,
it looks really cool.
thank you.
Yeah, that seems sufficient for the project, certainly. I don't know. We'll see. Mark's gonna be like, you let a square one through? No way.
Well, he said that it was okay. I did ask him like specifically, can we make our own version? Does it have to be like specifically our? He's like, no. It's like, does it have to have the same kind of background or stuff? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna try this. I did also have a bit of problem with having to sorry, I don't remember how it's called, but make an inside basically,
Mhm.
so that everything's blue outside and inside. I don't think it looks all blue. There are some red parts that come out. Yeah, I didn't know how to modify it all, and I don't think I can make my teapot lid an island of its own to be able to move it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I got a bit. Sorry.
So the inside is not all connected. It's not manifold.
I don't think it all is. No, I did try
Okay.
to go like close as possible, but it would just like shade red, even though it would look connected. And I had a hard time to like just try and connect it without it like making the full face and hiding, for example, for the connection to it being hollow and also hollow here. So that imagine you had water, it would just pour. I tried to make a face for the inside and it would just connect everything and it wouldn't like connect to where I connected all around the circle. So I had to do it one by one by one by one so that it would at least, do what I wanted, basically.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to have you show us what the inside looks like.
Sure, sure.
Um,
If I can,
okay.
I have this. I don't remember how you go into red mode.
Show,
I
show
think it's
me, keep it solid and show me the X-ray.
this one.
Mhm. Yeah, can you get in there with those? It looks pretty good. You got it mostly manifold, like you were saying. So there's like it's a little bit of maybe mesh really close to itself in the lips of the cubes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
For example, here, etc. There's a lot of areas where I had to do it by itself because it just wouldn't let me. It wouldn't connect to the areas that I asked it to go to. Just make a whole face, and then I would be like, I don't. It's not what I want. And yeah, again, a lot of pain and suffering. to
Yeah.
Figure out this.
Well, I won't subject you all to the twisted things that I would do to arrive at these forms.
Mm.
And I'll leave that correction to Mark. But I think this is sufficient. Your lid doesn't come free, right? And that's an issue.
Well, it's just here, I think I would have to select it and do P selection so I can make it its own thing, so I can move it. But for some reason, I don't know if it's because I didn't start out with making it 10 inches, because that was also a requirement to try and keep it in the 10 inches area, to be seen like as a real teapot, if it would be like 10 inches. I did that at the end so I wouldn't have to worry about scaling, because it's pretty easy to just select everything, just scale it down to it. But when I did it, it just made loads and loads and loads of just wires everywhere. And it's hard to just have to select that to make it its own thing, because you got all these other wires that you have to also like unselect. It's a lot of work, basically. It is. Even though now it is in the 10 inches, it just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is pretty like vertex dense, I guess. Gosh, it's so funny. Mark comes from a Maya background, I think. And I come from I learned Blender to complete my grad degree by myself because the college was closed because of COVID. And so like modeling things from curves is such a funny concept to me. I'm like, don't really think I can comment on this too much.
Well, most of what I had to learn, I had to go on the internet, because most of what Mark would say, I would be like, I'm confused. So I was like, maybe try looking on the internet. So I mostly learned from there, but I did try and then follow what he was. For example, for the here and here, it went really well for the handle, but when it came to here, it just like went really wonky and it just didn't follow the curve. So I had to find a way to just like go. I did in the end, but I like to like move in a ways that I didn't have to do for here, basically.
Yeah, okay, so you did use the curve modifier for this.
Yeah, for both the handle and the snout.
Okay. Yeah, I know, Azura, that's shocking to me as well, but well, that's probably good, right? I mean, like, it's a really good way to get you to think about the structure of what's happening in your models on a very base level, which I've spent my art career avoiding thinking about. So yeah, I mean, good on you. We have about 20 minutes left for this section. And thank you, Echo. I'm gonna have you stop sharing for now. We have about 20 minutes left for this section. I'm hearing from a lot of you, maybe it sounds like that you were having a little bit of trouble with this project. Is that correct? Like some of you got through with it, some of you are having a harder time. Antonio
I
shaking
feel
his-
like, yeah, I feel like I didn't have a super hard time, but I also messed around with Blender on my own. So for like maybe a beginner, that would be a little bit more difficult. I think the biggest problem was that his like key screen capped was covered for like an hour and a half, I think, of the actual modeling. And he didn't realize.
Um,
Yeah,
let's
like
see.
it helped a lot to be, since I was watching the recording, to be able to like stop and pause and then work on stuff and then be able to play again.
I feel like I can't answer a lot of questions on this project because I've never done it. So I wonder if the few of you who got through this project would walk me through it in my screen share, and then you would have a recording of this later on, at least. Do you think you could do that?
When you say walk you through it, do you mean just telling you step by step or showing you?
Tell me step by step.
Okay, that's definitely going to be harder to do.
Do you want to screen share, Azura? Can you give us the tutorial?
You know what? Sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
Let me get a blank slate in Blender so that my computer doesn't want to destroy itself from having everything open. All right. I do not have screencast keys on my computer, so I apologize. Since you're not able to see it, I'll try to explain what I'm doing very quickly. But here I go. So the first thing we did wasn't actually using a curve. We first imported circle mesh. I think he dropped it down to
Okay,
in this little
that
menu
makes
here.
so much more sense. Okay.
I don't know if he dropped it down to A vertices. That's what I would personally do. I also really wanted to scale this to be 10 inches. I totally forgot to do that when actually doing my version. I did that afterwards. Dropped it down. Yeah, we did drop it down to A vertices. Okay. How do I make this 10 inches? I'm going to worry about that later. I'm just going to show you how we model it first. Also, apologies for any low quality since my internet connection is very unstable apparently. So in object mode, we designed the shape of it by extruding it, left clicking to, or I think for him was right clicking, but left clicking to confirm the extrusion, which I know some people were having problems with, and then pressing S to scale to get it to be the right form. And we can basically do that repeated to get the general form of the vase that we were making. So it's E to extrude, Z to lock to the Z axis, click to confirm, and then S to scale to get the right size, click to confirm that as well. I'm going to drop this down back a little bit. And we repeat doing that until we get the right shape. E to extrude, X to scale, E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, S to scale, extrude, scale. And I'm going through this very quickly, but I
No,
already did this.
honestly, this is bridging a lot of gaps for me. I thought initially that you were meant to model this from starting with a curve.
No.
You all started with a mesh circle.
Yeah, we start with the mesh
That-
circle.
That makes
The
everything
curve-
make complete sense.
The curve comes
Um,
later. Actually, the curve comes now, basically.
Yeah.
So once we have
you
the
just
general,
use the curve modifier so that you could have a curve in the air that your circles could follow.
yes.
That makes sense. There's so much technical language around 3D modeling that if like one little wire gets crossed,
Mhm. And everything goes so wrong.
yes.
Now we have our Bezier curve right there in the middle. Add a bit, move that so it's to the side so we can see it. And then with this, also rotating it on the x-axis so it's the right way. This we can move it. I wrote R to rotate, G to move it, and then just drag the points wherever we want them to be. The point, he did drag the points. Yes, he did. I'm hoping I'm doing this very similar to how he did it. Drag the point, need to extrude off another point. It's gonna be a very wonky looking handle, but that's fine. I'm doing this very quickly.
Keeping
Sure,
your
we got
grabs
that
in
good.
one in the Z direction, right? Keeping your grabs planar.
Yes, because I'm also in orthographic view. Forgot to mention that. I'm in orthographic view on the y-axis, which is just one on the number pad. So that way it's locked to the x and z axis, whenever I'm moving it or rotating it. But now that I have my rough shape for the handle, we add in another circle. That one also only has 8 vertices. Yes. No, that one has 4 vertices. Sorry, that one has 4 vertices. Then in modifier tab, we go down to curve modifier in the deform section of it. Then we click the eye drop and click on our Bezier curve so they're connected.
Wasn't the handle a square and then the spout was a circle? From what I remembered from the recording.
I think so. I technically made a square in the most inefficient way possible, but it is a square because it has 4 first. Yeah, so normally let me just actually delete that and import plane the way he actually did it.
Yeah, I think that's a fine way to make it a square.
Yeah, it's probably more efficient than making a circle with 4 points.
Well, it's more of a non-destructive process too, right? You didn't have to delete a face.
Well,
because
neither of them
we're on a
was
square.
neither of them was destructive really, because I
Yeah.
just made a circle to begin with that only had 4 points, which is just a square.
Right.
But in edit mode, rotating this 90 degrees so that it's on the facing the right axis. In the modifier tab, we go to the curve modifier. Once again, I drop to select the actual Bezier curve. Then in edit mode, just gonna click that so we can see what we're doing. No, not that one. Then we can extrude on I remember where they start with a cube, but that's fine. I'm going to start with just the plane. But then we extrude on the x-axis multiple times. You can also press Shift R to repeat whatever you did last, which is what I'm doing to quickly do that. And scale it down a lot. Shift X to scale down everything besides the x-axis. Then scale it down to the size you want it to be. That seems like a good size. It's very low quality, but sure. Then you hide the curve. We don't actually need a curve anymore, but I'm just going to hide that. Now, before adding it, one thing I did forget to do is he actually rotated this on the z-axis. I think it was 5th. How much was it? Oh god, what did I do? 22.5 degrees. He probably wasn't as precise, but I'm being very precise about this because that's just the way I am. So we scale on the z-axis 22.5 degrees so that it's lined up properly. And now we can click on the curve and then the vase in object mode, or the teapot in object mode, and press Control J to join them into becoming one object once more. Then in edit mode, selecting the faces, we select the face. I cannot speak today, apparently. We click on this little square up here, selecting faces instead of just vertices, and we're clicking the ones that are overlapping, pressing delete key and only faces. And then now we can click on this one here, and press F to join them. And if you keep pressing it, I'm sorry, what? Oh, right, forgot about these faces here. Also, want to make sure there's no faces on these edges either. Otherwise, I'll give you like I just had, deleting those faces as well. Okay, now if you click on this corner, and press F to join them, if you keep pressing F around it, then it will automatically fill in the gaps, which is a very quick way of doing it without using the bridge tool. But the way he did it was, oh my god, where's the bridge tool again? Loop tools bridge. Is loop tools? Okay, you press W. You press W to get to this menu, press loop tools, and then press bridge. I believe that's how he did it. And I have to adjust that to its right. Oh, you're not. Oh, that's fine. I'm just gonna do it the other way. Press F to make a face and keep pressing it so it's all the way around. The way I personally got rid of this extra little indent was I selected all of the edges of this last little bit of the handle, then press X and press dissolve edges so that it just removes them and keeps all the connections. I'm going to do the same thing up here. If I actually click on all the right corners,
You could do
X dissolve edges,
Alt
which gives
left
us,
a loop.
say that one more time.
I think you could do a Alt left select to get a loop select also. right?
Yes, you can also press Alt and then click on the edge
Yeah.
while in edge mode to click on the edge on the entire loop. That was E to bridge. E does not bridge. E is to extrude. So you press E and then it extrudes. To bridge, you have to. Let me just make a really quick example.
Let's look
Of
at the
how-
cheat sheet.
I'm not sure if there was a really good hotkey to bridge thing. I don't actually remember fully how he did it. I just did it automatically, but I don't remember if he used loop tools or if he just pressed F to do all the faces around. Okay, he did press F to do faces. So yeah, it's just F to fill the faces, and then if you're selecting a corner, then it'll automatically keep filling if you keep pressing F around the edge. But that is how we got our handle. I remember someone asked how I believe echoes was all smooth. So under the modifier tab, you can go down to subdivision surface, which will make it really smooth, or in my case, really glitchy. Why are you doing that? I know why. Also, something that I totally forgot to double check was make sure all the normals are facing the right way, which how do we enable normals again? Face orientation. So this is also something that Echo said that they were having a problem with, was having faces not facing all the right way. So something to easily fix that is pressing the N, not N, it's pressing Alt N and then recalculate outside, or just Control N does it automatically, which will automatically realign all the faces so that they're facing the right way. This won't always work perfectly, but 9 times out of 10, this will just be a very quick and easy way to get everything facing the right way. So now that those are all facing the right way, the subdivision surface modifier works properly instead of what it was doing before. And disabling face orientation, because I don't like that one version personally. The colors annoy me. Then for what we did for the spout was we also had another curve. Object mode, rotating on the x-axis 90 degrees so it's facing the right way, or in edit mode, sorry. And then dragging it to however I want it to be, a lot of rotating. I am just gonna call this good because I'm doing this quickly. This one, we did a circle with 6 sides. I remember that one. That was the circle we did. Edit mode, rotating on the y-axis 90 degrees as well, so it's facing properly. Then curve modifier, I dropped to select the Bezier curve. I believe you have to change that. No, it was right on the x-axis. And then we can constantly extrude. I personally want these to be a little more in depth. Something to easily add more vertices is pressing Control R, which will give you this little yellow outline for adding a loop cut, and then right clicking to make sure that doesn't change, but you can also click and drag to make it to adjust where it's placed. I want these all to be in the center, so I'm just going to Control R, left click, then right click to cancel the transform. That way I have it as being much higher quality. I'm also going to heavily adjust the scaling. Probably should have done that beforehand. I'm undoing all of my loop cuts because that was not a very smart decision. That happens a lot with me, but it happens. Scaling down all of these so that they are the right size where I want them to be, which apparently is this. Applying the curve modifier, then joining it with the pod again. And
So Azura,
yes.
I hate to interrupt you because this is fascinating and I really appreciate your doing this whole demo for me. I have one more question before we take a break and then move on to our next section. And so what I would like to know is how you made the interior space,
Manifold, yes.
interior wall.
So the way that I personally did that, which I don't think is the way he did this, but is the way I personally found to be easier, which I probably should have done before connecting the handle, but it's fine, is I'm going to select just the vase or just the teapot, and you can press L over a certain part of the object so that it only selects all the parts that are connected to that part of the mesh. So because this spout is not connected right now, it's not being selected, but the handle is, so I have to manually deselect that. I'm just going to do this very quickly. You can press C, go into the circle tool, then shift clicking to deselect everything. And then the way I personally did this was I just press Shift D and then S to scale it down a small bit.
Can you
I
just do
believe, yeah, I just duplicated it, scaling on everything besides the Z-axis. And I raised it up a bit, scaled it slightly on the Z-axis, make sure everything's right, which gives me my interior wall. Connect it using F to draw a face around it, spamming it so that's done all of them. And I remember Echo was having a problem with this, enabling face orientation, with this weird mismatch of face orientations. So pressing Control N with everything selected will fix all of that and make sure that everything is facing the right way. Also going to close up these because those don't need to be open. My interior wall. I forgot to give it a face, but that's fine. So that's basically how we got the manifold interior that we designed. It is, I think he just manually extruded and modeled it that way, but this way is a little bit faster, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's how I would have done that. I was wondering whether he did a separate extraction in his demo. Or like, yeah.
And then making the spout manifold is basically the same thing. Extruding it, scaling it down a small bit, oftentimes manually adjusting it to make sure everything is in place, which is what I sadly have to do here. And then connecting the ends. And it looks all wonky now, but it'll look more right when the subdivision surface modifier is on.
How did you select them all without having to click on them individually and without clicking around it?
You can do that by pressing L over an object if they are not all selected. So right now the handle and the main part of the teapot, I keep on calling it vase, and the main part of the teapot is all connected right now. So it'll select both of those, but because the spout is not actually connected at all, it's technically a separate object inside of the same object, for lack of better phrasing, which are called islands. So these are two separate islands. You can just press L over this one and it'll only select that island. I don't know if that'll make any sense. It'll make more sense when you try to do it yourself. It's something that makes more sense doing than showing.
Well, I
But-
also had, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, continue.
I had a problem where I would try to, I would have to select one and select the other, but it wouldn't show me, for example, all the dots. I think it's also because of the island thing, and I would have to merge, I had to merge them all to be able to work on them all together. So,
You mean selecting every part of it all together at once?
well, for example, as you said, they're both different. So if you click on one, you can, use both, but if you click on one, you can move it because they're islands, right?
Yes.
What I did, so I would do that, but it wouldn't show me. It'd be the other one would be solid, its own separate thing, and I wouldn't be able to work on it with my other parts that I was working on. So I would have to merge them all and then work on them all. I think that's why I can't do the thingy.
Did you join them as being the same object?
Yes. I think.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Then
Not to interrupt you too much, I just want to let folks know we can keep this discussion going. You're allowed a 10-minute break at this point. And just thanks again to Zura for doing the awesome 20-minute demo.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stick around in here and I am going to try to take this 10 minutes to repeat this demo through a screen share, just so that I know that I have it.
okay.
And I'm curious. Yeah, thanks, Professor Azura. It was really helpful for me to understand the let's go ahead. Separate cool extraction that I did. Girl, why? Oh, this had to be 10 inches, which I have no idea.
If you just type the number and then put in afterwards, then it automatically converts inches to meters.
Oh, duh. Let's see.
In my personal opinion, I just wait till after everything's made to scale it down because the site's constantly going to change.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just gonna try and start out with that. Don't know why. Let's see if this happens again. Okay. I had created a separate extrusion, which is why I kept on getting this weird foot.
Ah,
Uh,
that
I
would
keep on
get
saying
you.
extrusion too, and it is it extrusion? Is it yeah, extrusion.
Yeah, it is extrude.
See, and I keep losing my bridge tools. I just want to bridge this.
I believe if you press W, that'll bring up the menu, and then under there will be loop tools.
I think I have W set to switch between my select boxes.
Oh,
And I don't think that's a choice that I made on purpose. Come to bridge here. Maybe it's in vertexes or edges. Edges.
oh, wait a minute. I realize I'm an idiot. I think loop tools is an add-on that I haven't enabled.
Ah, okay, let's do
That
that.
explains it.
It's a free add-on though, right?
Yes, I believe it comes with Blender.
That's why I have it. Let's see. Never gonna make it like this, team. Okay, well, just do this the cool and fun way. Let's see, and then if I
No, if you keep pressing F, if you just keep spamming F with that edge selected. Why is that not doing it?
don't know.
Is that another add-on I don't realize I haven't enabled?
You know, sure my setup is just a little less efficient. Hopefully that didn't create any extra edges.
Oh my god, yes it is. Ugh.
What's that add-on called?
It's called F2, which also comes with Blender, but
Let's see.
oh, I just realized half my tutorial was using add-ons that people don't have enabled.
Well, I mean, it's very cool. F2. So this
Yes.
just lets us do repeat fills.
That will let you repeat the fill.
Control E gives you bridge edge loops.
Beautiful. Thank you. Is that Antonio?
Yes.
Oh.
Let's see. So I'm going to then erase my life. Right, so Control E, bridge edge loops. Wait. But I only had one thing selected, so that will never work. Oh. Fine. Okay.
Shift Alt click,
Yo,
you select the other loop.
Yeah. I thought I had
Nice.
this already. So okay, so we've got that going. Let's see. I wonder if I should have made the lid before that.
Honestly, what I did for the lid was I just selected one of those loops, I duplicated it, and then modeled the lid after that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Since they're going to be separate objects anyway.
Let's even
Or-
do, let's do all of this. So oh God.
I think you have to be in
let's do-
vertex mode to do what you're trying to do,
I can do it this way too, right?
or face mode.
No, that's not going to easily give me the face ring. You're right, if I do that whole thing in vertex mode, it'll give me all of them. Go lid. Should probably need to fill in an interior there. All right, well, I've messed around with this long enough. Because I can throw in a handle. Okay, so I think in a second here, we're going to start doing our introduction to a few different modifiers. And I am doing what I'm doing right now purely for my own ego reasons. So I can stop doing this, but I am finding it very fun, so I'm loath to. Okay. Let's see. This one's close to the top. That's fine. All right. I'm gonna hide this and I'm gonna send it to Mark and be like, look, I did it. So let's see here. I think I have most feedback. It's about 11:05. I am going to start talking about a few modifiers. It looks like you all did subdivision, surfaces, and curve modifiers a little bit. But let's just go through what I have from Mark that you were going to go over today. Starting with some deform modifiers. So modifiers are these like procedural functions that we can add to mesh and curves. That's why. Which we can add through the modifier panel. And the mesh deform modifier.
You're in edit mode, by the way.
She's Louise Azura. Sorry. I'm having a hard time. So we're looking at the mesh deform modifier. And basically we can set up a mesh cage around the object that we want to deform. In this case, I'm using a cube. And the reason I was trying to be in edit mode is that since I've set the cube as the target for the deform modifier, I can grab the corners of the cube to edit what happens to the sphere. And this applies to so we can do some different kinds of shaping and controlling of our mesh this way. And yeah, what else? Let's go into this modifier. You can choose how precise you want this deformation to be. I think you have to choose this precision before it's bound. So if we unbind it, then we can up our precision and then rebind it. And it's going to make my computer feel really slow for a second. Yeah. Let's go, Blender. Show me 10 precision. No, it says it refuses. Says, please let me report this to Microsoft, your crimes that you've done. But yeah, so basically, if you crank it all the way up, watch your computer crash. It's going to try and make it as close as possible to that shape. And since it didn't have, yeah, exactly. It didn't have enough RAM to do that. So let's see. I just lost my entire demo file doing that, which is fun. Let's just do it from scratch. That's okay. So let's see. You did the curve modifier for your recent project, right? And you can use that to make a mesh follow a curve. Let's actually do this again with a circle curve modifier. Let's add a Bezier curve. Um, let's see. So for one thing, you can just like affect the shape by the proximity of the curve to your mesh object. And I'm going to do that more precisely in edit mode. There's also a way, which is going to fully escape me, to have your object follow this curve. And I fully do not have that set up anymore. Let's just move on to the next one. Yeah, that's probably true, Zura. I am having a little bit of technical difficulties. Just a second here. The technical difficulties being inside of my brain. I have a little bit of a panic attack at the moment. I'm going to pause my face for a second and return momentarily. Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I have severe anxiety and it cascades when I try and do things and it goes slightly wrong. So I apologize. I am just trying to work through that. If you notice me short circuiting. Let's move on to the displace modifier. Let's see, this one I was also having a little bit of trouble with earlier, but let's do this with a slightly more complex mesh. A V-sphere displace modifier, we can use a texture to create a displacement in the surface of the mesh. So that being like some waviness or some shape change of that variety. Thanks, y'all. Regardless of assurances, I go through it. So let's add a new texture to it. Let's go down to our texture and create one. Let's see. Just grab one from class. Okay, and it's going to use data from that texture to displace our mesh. If we add this with a subdivision surface modifier, we can get some more complex and smooth results. And we can adjust the strength and the mid-level to play with the outcome as well. The strength is going to multiply the effect of the mid-level. Let me look at the documentation really quick. So yeah, the strength of the displacement, after offsetting by the mid-level value, the displacement will be multiplied by the strength value to give the final vertex offset. So yeah, displacement strength is modified by the offset of mid-level. Mid-level is the texture value, which will be treated as no displacement by the modifier. Texture values below this threshold will result in negative displacement along the selected direction, while texture values above it will result in positive displacement. So if we mess with the mid-level and then change our coordinates, will also give us a different result. So we can have it displace only along the x-axis, we can have it only displace along the y-axis, and displace along normal gives us displacement in sort of all directions. Thank you, Sarah. I've used a lot of these modifiers to create different animations and using 3D scans. I haven't used them to do like useful things for society. So when I start talking about the mathematics of them and the useful application of them, I find myself at a bit of a loss because I use Blender like a monster and not like how Blender is supposed to be used. Which, you know, this year I've been working with the multimedia department and not the art department, and it's a little intimidating because Mark and Raymond and Matt are so knowledgeable about 3D modeling, and I really only try to break it as much as possible. Neither here nor there. But yeah, so this is the displace modifier being applied to a sphere. Let's move right along. Let's see, so did much deform, we did displace, we did curve. Cast on here too. Let's do something that's not a sphere for that. So cast, to the best of my understanding, tries to get your current mesh into the shape of a more spherical mesh. So sphere, cylinder, or cuboid mesh. So let's put this in the shape of a sphere. Let's give this some more subdivisions so we can really see it doing any of this. There we go. So we so a secondary object. Let's grab a actual circle, or a mesh circle, and let's transform. Let's grab a little bit. Yeah, so it's applying these transforms in relation to the circle. I mean, this is a way, I can't think of any practical use for this. I only know to use it as a crime. But you can animate these functions, you can use this to like emulate a I guess I should stop trying to pretend that I'm going to give you a reasonable function for this process. It just looks cool. You can create different effects by using different shapes of objects or different shaped modifiers for it. It will have different effects. It's going to more try and work this towards a cylinder instead of a sphere. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see it's like more spherical than cylindrical now. Yeah, so let's try to get those corners in play more. Let's see, let's try another set here. Let's do a shrink wrap modifier. Let's see here. So start out with a UV sphere. Let's add some subdivision to that. And then let's add in Suzanne. Let's turn our X-ray on here. So the shrink wrap modifier does what it says on the can. We can shrink wrap a mesh around another mesh. So if I add the shrink wrap modifier here, and I want to wrap Suzanne, it's going to do its best to approximate wrapping the vertices as close around that object as it can. We can affect that by changing the offset so that it doesn't fully touch the mesh. We can make it affect, most of these you can make them affect only a single vertex group that you designate ahead of time. So we could take this into edit mode and have it only affect like one part of the mesh by assigning a vertex group. That's another target. Never used it in project mode, not really sure. Nearest vertex, nearest surface point gives us slightly different results. I think, like if I had to guess, nearest vertex is going to try and align the vertexes to the other vertexes as closely as possible, rather than just trying to go to the closest possible surface. So maybe if you had something really jagged, where all of the vertices are on more out, get a better result with nearest vertex. And something more planar, maybe nearest surface point is better to get a cleaner shrink wrap. What else? Let's do array modifiers. Second, this is pretty rich vein. There's a lot of different stuff you can do with array modifiers. Like basically this gives you a repetition of an object along an axis or along multiple axes. We can determine the offset of those objects. So relative offset is going to be an offset that is, I'm just going to go to my documentation. So relative offset is a translation equal to the object's bounding box size along each axis multiplied by a scaling factor to the offset. And specify it in XYZ. Constant offset is a constant translation component to the duplicate object's offset. You can apply both of them. You can apply just one. see what else. The way that I've used this in the past has been to create even circles of objects. So we can try and do that now. We add an empty into the scene. We can use an object offset targeting the empty. And then we can adjust the object to create an array that follows the rotation or the position of the object. So let's see. Let's take down our count quite a bit so we can get a little better view of this. So something. There we go. Okay. Drag the original a little bit off the center point. I am now rotating the empty along the z-axis and just X-ray for no good reason. We can get our array to follow that rotation and create more even circles. Also adjust this by rotating the original object, which is really useful, and just like fine tuning how the circle aligns so that it looks more. See, we can choose to have the objects merge or not merge by a certain distance. So have them blend into each other if you'd like to. Just set this. Yeah, the first and last one can also connect to each other. This is a good way to make like propellers, or I don't know, I used this a lot when I was doing a little bit of like hard surface modeling to make like rivets on the surface of something, or you know, anything where you try to make an even circle of something in Blender. An array modifier is usually the simplest way to do that. It takes care of the calculations of like how close together everything is for you. So that's nice. Let's try our next one. Let's see, you've talked about subdivision surface a lot. And so cube is also a good way to. So Catmull-Clark is a subdivision method that will approximate a rounder shape. And a simple subdivision will just give us more should just give us more vertices without doing that. Oh, right, and it's not gonna show them to us because unless I apply this, right? Yeah. So, so simple subdivision, just like evenly subdivides all of your faces as equally as it can without changing the shape, and Catmull-Clark tries to get it to approximate a rounder shape. So I think I find myself using Catmull-Clark just almost exclusively. If I want a certain amount of an object to be subdivided in a different way, I usually would just go into edit mode, select the face that I want subdivided, and then right click and subdivide it. It's pretty rare that I would want to simply subdivide an entire mesh. But that option is there for us because Blender is optimal display. Skips displaying interior subdivided edges. I have no idea what that means. Let's see. Place vertices at the surface that would be produced with infinite levels of subdivision. Don't know, couldn't tell you. But regardless, like subdivision surface, we would use, you're going to use pretty heavily in Blender. It's also nice to have it visible in edit mode. Because much like, this is like the mesh deform modifier kind of, right? But it's giving us that more detailed view. We can shape a more detailed object by shaping a simpler object, which is really a powerful tool to have. Burned through that cube. Let's see, what else do we have on here? Okay, so there's the screw modifier as well. So let's grab a circle and try adding the screw modifier to that. Let's play around with this a little bit. So the screw modifier is going to take your object and twist it in the angle that you specify. Or the length that you specify, and then iterate that length. So what you're doing there is you're creating like different screws. If you're looking at the hardware store or whatever, have different like thread counts on them. So we're gonna set how like one bit of that thread count would look, and then we can iterate that to make as long of a screw as we want. And we can change the axis along which we're doing this as well. Go with the Y for this. We can change how many steps this is being rendered as well, so we can affect like how many subdivisions the modifier is going to give to this. And we can just be checking our geometry as we go as well. There we go. That's more what I was after. This, yes. Yes, a donut. No, I think this is just really, I'm getting wrapped up in this geometry because I just think it's really interesting. It's the inside is the outside situation. Wonky looking donut. It's a almost non-Euclidean donut, but not quite. Yeah, so this is one where you can do this. You can also like, I make it swatted back from trying to do this. I'm gonna see if I can make this work. Convert curves to mesh and then add the screw modifier to create a full shape out of that curve. So this is another way you could have made your teapot spout or something, for instance, or you can make your entire teapot body this way really easily. Or you can make like, you know, just partial of this to make like a flower petal. You cannot purchase the 5D donut. The 5D donut finds you. That's the beginning and the end of it. So yeah, this is a really cool way to just like make round forms easily with curves. You can do it with geometry. It has a wonkier effect than when you're just using curves. Let's see, what else do we have? All right, so we can look at the mirror modifier. So I'm going to add in an object here, and I'm going to add in an empty as well. I'm going to add a mirror modifier to the cube, and then object I'm going to set to be empty. So with that empty there, I'm going to have my objects transformations mirrored on either side of that equally. And if we add axes to this, so now it's mirroring in X and Y direction, Z, now it's mirroring in all three directions. I think flip is going to be something that I want us to not use an empty, is that right? Have you flip in the next direction? Have to merge more. Yeah. Tell me how to do flip. Blender documentation. When bisect is enabled on an x-axis, you can use the setting to switch the side kept and mirrored. Okay, so we have to have bisect enabled as well. And all right, there we go. Okay, so if I have bisect enabled and all of that on that axis, it's not going to show up. Gosh, the positive side will be kept instead of the negative one. I really can't tell the difference, Blender. I'm not so sure.
What bisect does is it makes it, well, normal mirror modifier, both sides gets mirrored to the other side. With bisect, only one of the sides gets mirrored and the other side gets deleted, for lack of better phrasing. So flip just flips which side gets mirrored and which side gets deleted.
Okay, so I can't really see what's happening because I'm using
not with this example.
Symmetrical form. So then how would we affect that? So if I make this less symmetrical,
You also need bisect on the axis that's being mirrored across, and flip only works on the axis that is being bisected.
Okay. Okay, I see. So it's a mystery cube, I guess, is what you're saying. No, I'm just not picking it up. I literally use this almost entirely to just like keep sculpts symmetrical and not for anything else. Sometimes I'll use it in the edit mode alongside a skin modifier to do like simple character models. But I can show you that in a second, actually. So let's see here. So this cube into the edit mode. I'm going to merge all of its vertices at the center to make it a single vertex. And then I'm going to add a skin modifier to that vertex. So basically it's making a 3D form that covers this vertex entirely. And we can do some fun stuff with that in edit mode. If I have X-ray on and I'm not in face mode, okay. So we can start extruding our vertex and getting complex forms. Again, this is a lot like using a cube and adding a subsurface to it and extracting a face in edit mode. Or I think we were doing something similar with the mesh deform modifier as well, right? So it's a way to like take a simple thing and make complicated things. I use this one for a process to make simple character designs. We can use it alongside a, bring it back to simple. We can use this alongside a subsurface modifier and a mirror modifier. There they are. Who is she? Okay. Well, I keep on making this extra one because my hands are doing that today. But you can basically use this to make stick figures that already have mass, and it auto calculates their geometry. So you can flex with this to make it have a very clean geometry to make a really simple character. And all that you're actually doing for modeling is creating a stick figure. You can also like press Control A and affect the scale of the skin around that single vertice with a single vertice selected. And doing that can give you really complex ways for forms to intersect. And it's a fun way to just like do some weird modeling. You can also like scale things only in certain directions, but I think, what does that mean? It's local. They have like local axes. So to get this to scale in the global Y direction, we'd have to scale it in the X direction. Local space. Because that one was first on the ground. X would be reoriented. Yeah, so that's combining a few of those together. What else? It's about 11:46. Take a break in a minute. I'm trying to think if there's modifiers. Does anyone have any questions about modifiers that I went over? Or want me to try and demo one that I didn't cover? In that case, I think I'm just gonna have you all go on a 10-minute break and come back at noon, and I will go over some sculpting stuff. Okay, let's see. It's been a little over 10 minutes. But I think we're gonna jump back into it pretty soon here. And I think our next step is to give you a little demo on sculpt mode. And just to go over some of the tools there. Most of you folks are keyboard and mouse users, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blender's sculpt mode is hotly contested because most people who are doing sculpting really prefer ZBrush or some other program. I would say that Blender's sculpt mode is actually really, really nice. And that is only expanded if you get just even a very simple drawing pen stylus. But it's totally usable if you are just using a mouse and keyboard as well. So let's take a little look at that. Good. Antonio's cat. So I'm going to start out with a cube. I think for most like figuration sculpts and different things, I like to start with a cube because I like the geometry that a subdivided cube gets better than the UV sphere geometry. I think I could best describe that as the UV sphere. There's a pole at either pole. So there's like a lot of different intersections all happening at the top. And it's really hard to sculpt around that because it just doesn't smooth cleanly. And a cube sphere is like much more clean looking when you're sculpting on it. So I'm going to turn this up to 3 for now. And we're going to do a subdivision first, and then I'll talk a little bit about multi-resolution modifiers. So let's take this into sculpt mode. And let me just cover my bases really quick. So first things first, we have all of these different brushes, and Blender is constantly adding new brushes. And we can either adjust our subdivisions here in our modifiers. We can also adjust them in the remesher. So we'll get to this in a second, and we'll get to this in a second, dynamic topology. But let's go over some simple brush work first. So also, I think, you know what, I'm gonna treat myself to a matte cap. I really like this one for sculpting because it just has a nice clay look to it. So all of these brushes are just like very fluid ways to alter a mesh. We can also choose here whether we want our piece to be symmetrical or not. I'm just going to work not symmetrical right now. We can change the size of our brush using F and clicking. We can also change the strength of our brush up here. And yeah, I just can start drawing my okay. Aha. Apply your subdivision surface modifier. It's been a minute. So draw is just going to give you a rounded protrusion from your mesh. This is kind of nice for creating just like quick surfaces and making big changes. I tend to prefer the clay strips when I'm working, which is really just a refiguration of draw. Clay strips draws on top of itself a little bit nicer, and I think this will look a little bit more obvious if we switch to remesh. I'm going to take my voxel size down. You want to be really careful with your voxel size. You saw me crash Blender earlier. But the lower you go, the more vertices you will have. So I would just sort of like inch it down in your vertices number as you go and sort of like see how much. For me right now, I think 0.01 is going to be plenty. So you set that and then you can remesh. And you can see I still have my look, but it's just like subdivided my mesh a lot in there. And it's going to do its best to just sort of like approximate retopology when it does that. So I like clay strips because it gives you these like nice lines. And I like how it goes on top of itself, creates really nice creases. Oh, I just pressed G and switched to the grab brush, but we're talking about the grab brush too. The grab brush takes a single vertice and tries to like evenly within this circle, pull all of the vertices around that with the leading one at the front. And you can like use it to create these kind of like pulls, or you can use it as a larger brush and you can use it to sort of like gently nudge your mesh into a different overall shape. This is really useful for like getting a skull shape in place. Or like getting your neck going. Yeah, so it's a really useful one. Similar to that is elastic deform. Elastic deform is really similar to grab, but it is going to grab more of the mesh and try and grab it all more evenly. So it looks more like it's making a rubber ball out of your entire mesh rather than like grabbing a single point and pulling it. And there's another mode of grabbing called snake hook. Snake hook is going to be the most precise, like tiny version of this. So it's like good for making like tendrils. It does in this mode have this issue of if we try and like make too sharp of a bend, it's going to grab that single vertice and create some weird artifacts. But we can fix that either by remeshing and then holding shift to smooth, or by turning on dynamic topology. So dynamic topology is going to create mesh under your brush. So while you're using your brush, you'll be creating more geometry, and it makes really messy geometry, but it allows us to do like much longer versions of this. And it's also, I don't know, it can be really nice to sculpt with. Okay, so we also have to adjust some settings here. Right now, it's gonna make these really, let's go with this, right? It's making really big geometry. We want to take it down a notch. I also have mine set to relative detail. So if I'm zoomed all the way out and I do that, it's going to remesh my entire thing. But if I take this down, let's take it down to 3. Let's remesh back to our, you can't have both of these at the same time, so you to take off dynamic topology before you remesh. I'm going to remesh my thing again, turn dynamic topology back on. And then let's see if we can. So see, it's creating these much more smoothly. And I can do a little bit more curves with them without creating that artifact pull on the mesh. So Snakehook's really fun to play around with. Dinotopo is really fun to play around with. If you're sculpting a figure or something like that using Dinotopo and your I'm on layer. Yes, I think what I'm gonna have to do, Ryan, is send this recording to Mark and have him put it up for you all, because I don't have access to the D2L and I couldn't record on the official meeting, but you'll have access to this. But if you're using Dinotopo in combination with the clay brush, you can get some really neat forms. And it makes like under sculpting really nice. So if I'm sculpting like a part of a musculature and I'm using the clay strips brush to do that, it's really nice to build up forms that look more approximate to flesh and then just come in and smooth them out to create more of a like skin layer. What else? Didn't really talk about, turn Dinotopo off for a second. So there's also the inflate brush. And inflate is going to like choose a center point at the center of your click and push everything along its normals out to making it look like it's inflating like a balloon. Right, so it's pushing all these forms together. There's some tricky ways to use this to like, how can I? Let's make a smooth area first. Let's bring in another really useful brush, the crease brush. When I'm using the crease brush, what it does is it makes a crease in your object, right? The most useful way for me usually to use this is to turn the strength all the way up and bring the size of the brush really far down, because then you can draw in really fine detail on the surface of your piece. And one way you can use inflate is to accent those kinds of lines, bring things a little closer together. There's another way that you can kind of bring things closer together by pinching over the top of your crease. So the pinch brush just tries to do something similar to crease, where it just pulls all the geometry towards itself in the area under your brush. So it can be really nice for using alongside the crease brush to create fine lines. Yeah. What else? There's also blob. Blob is like a more domed version of draw. Let's see. There's also yes, Peppa's alter ego. Let's see what else. Let's Let's talk about Scrape. Scrape is one of my favorite brushes because you can use it to really hone in really good shapes on your sculpts. Like really cleanly. And it's really good if you're sculpting rocks for one thing, but it's also really good for doing human forms and blocking them out before you start to add detail and getting things like really clean looking. If you start to scrape multiple planes together, they get these nice lines in between them, these nice ridges. And you can start sort of like faceting your piece nicely. Another application for pinch is to then come in and make these facets more stark. So really like you're using all of these things in tandem to approximate sculpting. It's a little, you can do something like, I mean, like you can do creating an entire piece just using the grab brush and the clay strips, for instance, if you're making something really organic. It's really easy to do that, but there's lots of different approaches you can take, different tools you can use in concert. Let's talk about this is a relatively recent addition, the cloth brush. For the main way you could get cloth-like effects in Blender was through the cloth physics tab thing, physics property, which is really hard to use and it's like get clean results in, but with the sculpt brush, you can just like drag and get nice cloth effects. And then just like smooth on top of it to refine it a little bit. I also am like, I'm showing you this without the shade smooth on it, but with shade smooth, the cloth just sort of automatically looks pretty nice. But basically like click and drag, it sort of pulls these little dimples sort of in the direction that you're pulling as you go. It's a really fun brush. And also, again, with this one, pretty important to make sure you don't have too many voxels going for your computer to handle. You can crash your situation with this pretty easily. Example, yeah, it hates this. Please don't make me cloth this entire area, it seems to say. I also do, when I'm sculpting, I use Shift to turn on this brush, the smooth brush. I do it constantly because kind of what you're doing is you're creating these sort of imperfect forms and then you work them back to create the more refined forms, and working back and forth using smooth and like a draw brush is kind of the process for getting nicer looking shapes. Let's see. Multi-plane scrape is kind of cool. It gives you, tries to do like a double version of scrape. So it's doing it on either side. It takes a lot of refining to get like in the actual brush settings. There's, by the way, a bajillion brush settings for each brush, right? You can go into these brush settings and like completely redefine what this brush is doing. We can affect how like much of the how many normals is this thing affecting? Like, does it have any like auto smooth? Is it smoothing itself automatically as it goes? Is it how hard are the edges? I can adjust the plane angle. I think one way that I find this to be a little bit more useful is it starts out at a slightly acute angle. And I think having a slightly lower angle, I'm doing this backwards. No, I got it right. I've done geometry. I know about these kind of. Give myself a little bit of a broader angle makes it interrupt things less. Because this can be really helpful, like if you're doing the hard edge on the bottom of a lip, for instance. Multi-plane scrape can be really helpful for getting that little bit of definition. But it, also tends to like obliterate one side of what you're working on. So if you make that second, it's so that one side is guiding a nice angle and the other side is like missing the geometry because you've set the angle wide enough, it can give you a really nice defined like V cut. Yeah, kind of requires there to be a pre-set up form for it to work nicely. And I think this brush is probably still in development a little bit. What else? There's all different kinds of ways that you can mask things. So I can box mask by clicking and dragging, and now everything I do will not affect this area that I've masked. And you can do some weird stuff with that as well. So now that that's masked off, if I select move, I can like stretch and drag this entire piece away from there. And if we look at the wireframe now, you'll notice that it didn't add any cross geometry, it just stretched those vertices out. So if we want these to be more sculptable, we would have to go in and do another remesh. And now we have geometry we can actually work with. So what else? There's other ways to mask things. You can just use a mask brush as well. Works on the same way as the other things. The mask also has a strength. So if you set the strength all the way up to 1, like that spot's not going to move. If you set the strength further down, it's a little bit more situational. Like it might get a little bit of an effect from the sculpting you're doing nearby. And sometimes like working on organic forms, that's really helpful because you don't want it to completely like mechanically cut off an area that you're working next to. You want it to kind of blend in. So using a lower strength mask can be helpful for that. I think it also is set automatically to accumulate. Which means that if I start masking, yeah, so you can see it's getting darker as I go over the top of it. So it will accumulate the amount that it's masked as you make more strokes on top of itself. So something to consider there. Let's see, there's some other weird little things. Line project is a really weird one. So the way that this this gradient is facing, I believe will all be cut off of the mesh entirely. And I think if I do, I'll just do a small area. So it just makes a really clean cut all the way across where you have dragged it. And since I masked that area off, it isn't affecting it. You don't have any homework this week. I don't know when you asked that Katie, but you're unhomeworked this week. I know Mark has plans for you all to go really in depth into normals next week. And so that might be something to investigate. Let's see, does anyone have any questions about any of these brushes before I move on to talk a little bit about multi-resolution modifiers? Let's go into it. I'm going to delete my demonic Peppa Pig and add in a fresh cube. And we're going to add a multi-resolution modifier to it. And so on the most basic level, or at the level of my understanding of this, multi-resolution allows you to sculpt on different resolutions of your mesh all at the same time, and also separately. So right now there's no subdivisions, so I can only affect this amount of faces. If I subdivide, I now have 2 different levels of subdivision that I can affect with sculpting. If I subdivide again, now I have 3 different levels. So I'm going to add a couple more, and then we'll take this into sculpt mode. Right now, we're looking at the same subdivision level on all of our modes, but I can also like lower this, and I can, let's do this with grab. I can sculpt this bit, and anything you do on the lower levels is going to be repeated on the higher levels, but the things that you do on the higher levels will not be represented on the lower levels. Does that make sense? So if I take this back up to 4 and I do some of my patented cool crease work, and get some like really, oh, look at this fine detail all in around here. That shouldn't be represented on the lower subdivision levels. And to make sculpt tools to form the base mesh will presume. Yeah. Okay. And for that thing that I just described to be an effect, we should go into shape and apply something as the base. So I'm going to make this my base. And then I'm going to add in my subdivisions. And now when I go into sculpt mode, nothing to on here. Gosh. So if you're on a lower poly and you're using crease, you can really only use it along edges. If you try to do it like here, dragging it along faces, it can't crease those because it has no effect on them, right? It can't destroy a plane to create a crease in the middle of it, or it would be creating new geometry. So you can really only get it to work following edges. But regardless, this should not affect any of the lower layers. So yeah, this is a good way to preserve different parts of your work. Yeah, it's a good way to keep things in place or working on different levels. Like if you need to change the profile of your object and you don't want to affect too much of your fine detail, you might go back to this and, well, I need this to have a more intense profile. I don't want to have that affect my drawings too much. You can do it without doing that. What else have we got over here? Here on this. Let's talk a little bit more about Dynatopo. Multi-res will not work with Dynatopo because you're creating geometry. It can't preserve geometry. So if we're in dynamic topography, it's not going to be able to work with multi-resolution modifiers. But I just wanted to make sure I covered the so let's do just like a little bit of random sculpting, and then let's take a look at the wireframe. So you can see how this is creating geometry, and there's simpler geometry here and more complex geometry here. There is a tool called Simplify, which allows us to create not simpler geometry. Let's see here. I don't use this a ton, so I pulled up the documentation for this brush earlier. Collapses short edges as defined by the detail size. That's why, okay. So when you're using this brush, you also have to go and readjust your detail size. So we can make it as simple or as complex as we want using this brush. And again, I have relative detail set. So if I zoom out, it's going to make it more simple because it's further away. Closer in, it's going to be more complex. Right. What else about dynamic topography? See, working with smooth shading on is nice a lot of the time. We can do constant detail as well, which will mean that zooming has no effect on the size of the geometry that's created. To work with relative a little bit more. Because it's nice to be able to adjust to a higher detail level just by zooming in. There's some other things we can do with this. I'm not sure if cloth works with Dynatopo. Oh, it does. Uh, um, so Scrape is also really nice to use with Dynatopo on. Of course, I'm going to get all of these little artifacts because I'm working from a unsubdivided cube. What else? I think I've pretty much covered all of the brushes I have been asked to cover. Thank you. I have thoroughly rumbled this cube. I don't know, yeah. Do you have any questions about sculpt mode so far? Anything that you've been playing around with it that didn't make sense or that you want demoed? I probably know at least a little bit more about this part than I do about other parts of Blender. So I'd be a little bit more equipped to demo or answer questions around it. What can we do? That's a new tool. There's rotate. Gives you a nice sort of spirally form. I'm unfamiliar with that notification sound. Inch, blob, decrease. And there's flatten as well. Flatten works a lot like, or am I still on Dynatopo? Let's take that off. And then let's just remesh. Let's do 0.025. So you can also sculpt things with Dynatopo and then go back to Dynatopo off, remesh it, and then keep working that way. So you can use Dynatopo just for like a portion of your mesh and then bring it back into consistent voxel size, which is really helpful. Yeah, thank you, Zura. Thank you for doing that demo at the beginning of class. That was really helpful. Cannot stress enough how helpful that was. Okay, that's something we could play around with. So let's go back into object mode. Let's add a multi-res modifier. We'll create one subdivision level. And okay, I didn't know if I did this either, but you can also reverse or delete higher subdivisions. So if I go back to 0, I should be able to, yeah, delete all the higher subdivisions that I had created. So that's, you know, if you had created a higher subdivision of something and you didn't like any of the detailing that you did on it, you could just delete that layer instead of resculpting the entire thing. or going back to an earlier version. I think the displacement eraser does something similar. Let's play with that. So if I do something more obvious, like a cloth, oh, I've done cloth and too high of a subdivision to make my voxels too small. Too small? No, okay. It likes that. So I did that on the higher level. And what's this? Yeah, so then you can actually use this to kind of blend back towards your original level. So it's not getting rid of it entirely, like I could have controlled Z, but I can also blend it back towards the original form by using the displacement eraser instead of just like completely undoing it. So then you can get some nice like blending effects instead of, you know, going all out and just deleting what you've done. So thumb is like the least affecting of the grab tools. We'll just sort of like gently nudge a piece of geometry, much like you've pressed your thumb into it, just slightly. Oh yeah, I was trying to explain flatten, that's what I couldn't do. Flatten works like smooth, except for the area that you are going over. It's just going to try to bring everything that you touch to the same plane as much as possible. And that can sometimes be helpful. I do generally prefer to use scrape for that function. It's obviously situational, but I find myself using scrape a lot more than I end up using flatten. Oh, I didn't cover something relatively important, which is that holding control, this is what I meant to be doing. You can do the reverse effect of what your brush does. If I'm doing draw, and I'm making this domed outward form, I can create a concave form that's inverse to it by holding control and going alongside of it. That's extremely useful because again, like because sculpting is so much about working these forms back and forth, being able to invert them is just like incredibly helpful. You can also do it by switching to negative up here if you don't want to hold control for the entire time. But I think especially if you are using a tablet, you know, setting a button for control is really helpful. What else? There's a ton of other stuff. I mean, like you can do all these different adjustments to the stroke of your brush. The brush is a series of like dot inputs. So spacing those dot inputs out changes how it interprets them. So like where the draw brush is this like one smooth form, you could adjust the I think spacing distance or dash length, and yeah. So now I'm just like applying that draw brush dimpled all over the form. Let's see. Let's try to the effect of that is better felt than explained. But basically it's not wanting to draw as many long surfaces. It wants to like press further in instead. Fall off shape. This is just like, you can make the brush more custom by saying like, I actually want a sharper draw brush, and it's going to have like a slightly sharper shape to it. It's more V-shaped, less dome-shaped. Something to experiment with. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left. I really appreciate you all sticking with me today. Is there any questions I can answer about any of this before I take off? Is there nothing? I'm looking only at Echo and Antonio right now. Neither of you seem super, okay, I can see Gabe's face, kind of. No questions, no
No
questions.
questions right up now.
All right.
Just a lot of processing.
There's a lot to process.
I mean, it's a very, very big app, so
It's a what?
sorry, I'm saying app. It's a very big software.
Mm.
There's a lot of things that you can like, oh, there's this, but you're never gonna use it and all that. But it's just like what you're gonna use has like, you got this and there's this layer to it and this other layer, and underneath there's a secret layer that you'll never know of, but that's there.
Do not look at the secret layer, Echo. It should not be uncovered.
My eyes have been tainted.
Yeah, no worries, Katrina. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a lot to process. There's, gosh, there used to be only like 10 brushes. And there's a billion of them now, 20 or something. I don't know. 20 is a billion in terms of like what all these different brushes do. I would say something that was really enticing for me when I was playing a little bit more in depth with Blender recently was learning that I could do, oh, that was trim. I just trimmed that entirely off there. Box masking. And then just using directional or rotational inputs to create more dynamic forms. Because something you'll hear a lot when you get more into sculpting is that your profile is really important. So creating characters or whatever you're creating, that it be recognizable by its profile alone makes it more makes it like a usually more appealing or dynamic form. And so using these like move, rotate, scale brushes in combination with the box masks is really helpful for making really dynamic forms really quickly. And on that note, yeah, I'll get this recording to Mark, and it was really nice to meet you all. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you for today. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Tal.